folks? It's Michael Bench, noted barbecue connoisseur. So I'm going to do a little on-the-spot interview here. Michael Bench, you come here once, twice a year now. You get to come hang out. Your family's here. And every time you come, I know you always get you just a grip of barbecue. So Michael Bench, what's your favorite Salty's barbecue item? Well, you know, bud, I have to get a bunch of food because I got a big family here. So we always load up on family packs. Could be 2, could be 3, but then we have to get extra bread and extra sides and spicy mac and cheese and the green beans. They absolutely love that stuff. So you know what I'll be doing? I'll be doing that tomorrow night. You can find us at 9425 Rosedale Highway or 6801 White Lane. Or if you want, you can go to saltysbbq.com and order online. Salty's Barbecue and Catering. California Grill, Texas approved. Oh, it's good.
Are you looking for a hospital that truly cares for your health and well-being? At Good Samaritan Hospital, they provide high-quality medical detox, psychiatric services, and medical and surgical care. They accept most insurances, including Medi-Cal, Medicare, and Kern Family. They offer Kern County's longest-standing inpatient detox program with dual diagnosis that combines medical care and withdrawal management all under one roof. Learn more at GoodSamaritanHospital.com or call 661-215-7500. Good Samaritan Hospital. They care for their community.
It's that man again, Ralph Bailey. You're listening to the JR Show on Newstalk 96.1 and AM 1230 KERN. Keep it locked. TRBS coming up at 3.
Welcome back. Clayton Campbell here, pinch hitting for JR Flores. He's at the zoo today, I'm told.
He is, the Fresno Zoo. Never actually been to their zoo.
I've been. It's actually pretty nice.
Is it really?
You know, I went to the Fresno Zoo about, 6 months after the incident in San Francisco where the juvenile delinquents broke into the zoo and they shot the tigers with a paintball gun.
Oh, that's right.
And the tiger jumped over the wall and killed at least one of them and badly injured another. And I think the other one locked himself in the bathroom until morning when the zoo people showed up. So then they discovered that the fence that they built for the zoo for the tiger confinement wasn't high enough. And they had documented examples of tigers leaping higher than whatever it was, 19 feet or 21 feet. And so when I went to the zoo in Fresno, I was curious to see how high the wall was at the tiger confinement. And they had built this industrial strength net over the enclosure so that the tigers can't get out. I mean, they have to be motivated to jump over that wall, and shooting them with a paintball gun is,
you're not going to stop them if they really want to get to you.
That's right. You'd have to have a higher wall.
Exactly.
You should know better. Knuckleheads going in there. Fatal mistake. All right. When we went to break, we were talking about this indictment of the Poverty Law Center by the U.S. Department of Justice. And we've discussed the first 6 counts, which were wire fraud and kind of some of the allegations, how the government might prove that. Let's talk about some of the other counts. So there are additional counts charging violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 1014, which are counts 7 through 10. To prove this charge, the government has to also prove every element. According to the jury instructions that we have for this charge, the government has to prove each of these elements beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that the defendant made a false statement or a report or willfully overvalued any land, property, or security to a federally insured bank or financial institution. Second, the defendant made a statement knowing it was false at the time. And third, the defendant did so for the purpose of influencing in any way the action of the bank. For example, opening an account or processing a transaction or approving related activities. So they don't have to show that the bank was actually influenced or actually did anything. And it doesn't have to be a material element. So remember, in the wire fraud, they have to show that the lie or the omission was material. And that means it would have made a difference in on the part of the recipient or the hearer of the lie. So what facts do they allege that might actually help them prove this charge? So they're claiming, the government claims in its indictment, that Southern Poverty Law Center created and used at least 5 fictitious entity bank accounts with no legitimate business purpose, and that they used fake books and made false or misleading statements to the banks in order to open those accounts. So to go down to the bank and say, hey, I'm creating an account for bookstore or whatever, this fake business that didn't exist. so that then SPLC on its books could show that they paid money from its funds, from its donated funds into the bookstore. And then the bookstore would cut the check to the Nazi or the white supremacist who was going to go out and do white supremacist things to stoke the ire of the public and then theoretically compel donors to send more money to SPLC. That's the idea. So if there's a sham bank account for a sham business, when I say bookstore, there is no actual bookstore involved. No used books were harmed in the perpetration of this scheme. What they did is they just made a fake business, like something the mob would do to launder money. So that's the allegation here. And then the third type of charge, it's counts. I think it's just count 11. That's 18 U.S. Code, Section 1956, Subdivision H. And this is conspiracy to commit concealment money laundering. So the government has to show that there was some kind of an agreement. These are the elements of conspiracy to commit concealment money laundering. The government has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there was an agreement between two or more persons to commit money laundering. And that means conducting or attempting to conduct a financial transaction involving proceeds of specified unlawful activity. In this case, it would be the wire fraud, knowing that the transaction was designed in whole or in part to conceal or disguise the nature, location, source, ownership, or control of those proceeds. Secondly, the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant knew the objective. That means they knew the unlawful purpose of the agreement. And third, the defendant knowingly and voluntarily joined or became a member of the agreement with the intent to further its unlawful purpose. So they don't actually have to prove that they perpetrated the scheme that they agreed to do. They don't actually have to have an overt act under this type of conspiracy, and then the penalty matches the underlying money laundering offense. So if you conspire to commit a crime, the penalty for the conspiracy is the same as the penalty for the crime itself. Now, this is an organization that's been charged. As far as we know, they're not seeking indictments against individual people that worked for the organization, but I would be surprised if they didn't. You can't put a corporation, even a nonprofit corporation, in prison. All you can do is fine that corporation. So those are the charges against the Southern Poverty Law Center. Some of the facts that might support the false statements made to a federally insured bank. It is alleged, I already went over that one. Okay, what are the facts that are alleged to support the conspiracy to commit concealment money laundering? So the government claims that there was an agreement via organizational policies and practices to use the informant payment network. When I say informant payment, their SPLC calls the Nazis that they gave money to informants. So they gave money to people that were high up in the Klan and in the Nazi Party of America to help them do racist stuff. And then they claim that they were just paying them as informants. Now, does that sound a little bit weird to you? When I think of informant, I think of someone who's a snitch giving information to the cops. That's an informant. Have you ever worked with a nonprofit that has informants on its payroll? I haven't. This is not the type of activity that nonprofits typically involve themselves in. Nonprofits are supposed to be doing charitable work. They collect money. They can do some public advocacy as long as it's not overtly political and they lose their tax exempt status, which is unbelievable to me that SPLC, I don't know if they're still tax exempt, but they're overtly political in every respect. But they have informants. And some of these people that they paid, according to the allegations, they're not just like the worker bees. They're the people that are in charge of these groups. So I can imagine that conversation. Let's say you're the guy from SPLC who has to go meet with the Klansmen and arrange the payment from your fake bookstore. And you go to the Klansmen and you say, hey, we'd like your help perpetrating racism. And the Klansman says, you know what? There's just no money in this. I got to get a real job at some point. And so SPLC says, well, we don't want you to quit doing the racist stuff. So let's, because we need it. If you don't do all the racist stuff, we can't collect donations because then there's not enough racism. You see, there's not enough organic racism in America to meet the demand for it. The supply is just there's just not enough supply for the demand. So we gotta pay people to increase the supply. So we'll take the donations that are meant to destroy this evil from our society, and we'll pay the Klansmen to keep doing it. That's just outrageous. So if that really happened, if they can prove this, this is one of the biggest scandals in American jurisprudence. I mean, it's just unbelievable. This is a huge scandal if this is true. Now, what is SPLC saying? They're claiming that they can't actually operate unless they get intel. And in the past, they have fed information to the feds to help the feds prosecute people for getting involved in things like burning churches or setting, doing the Klansmen will do their terrorist activity. And so they've actually helped the government find people that are guilty of these crimes in the past. So if it's true that they were just gathering information so that they could pass it along to the Justice Department for prosecution, that would be one thing. But it's hard to believe, normally when you're paying an informant, it's like you pay the guy at the bottom, the very bottom rung of the drug dealing enterprise to rat out somebody above them. You don't pay the guy at the very top. You don't go down to Colombia and get the head of the cartel and pay him to rat out the street drug dealer. So it seems to be a little bit like flip-flopped here. So I don't know. I'm skeptical of this. But as Ben Shapiro says, the supply of racism isn't great enough to meet the demand for it in America, and so we have to manufacture it. This is like Jussie Smollett. Only at least that guy had the integrity to pay for his race hoax out of his own pocket, or SPLC went to people, perhaps victims of racism, who believe strongly in equality in America. Maybe they're little old ladies who could only afford to give $20 and out of their Social Security check to fight this stuff. And they took that money and they paid it to actual Klansmen and Nazis. And then they have the gall to go out and call conservatives in America Nazis. It's just completely backwards, upside down, and apparently felonious. All right, it's time for a break. I'm Clayton Campbell filling in for J.R. Flores. We'll be back shortly.
With SRN News, I'm Bob Agnew in Washington. Iran today fired on 3 ships in the Strait of Hormuz and seized 2 of them. The intensification of Iran's assault on the shipping in a waterway crucial to the global energy supplies came a day after President Trump extended that ceasefire, but did press on with the American blockade of Iranian ports. The stock market rallying toward more records today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was up by 340 points. The S&P 500 rose.
Any music preferences, sir?
Age 80, Scott was the first black chairman of the House Agriculture Committee and was seeking his 13th term in Congress. And that's despite being challenged by somebody within his own Democrat Party. You'll find more on these stories at srnnews.com.
Headlines from the KERN Newsroom.
I'm Chris Davis. The main body of the Toyota Tacoma was intact, but the cab was crushed after Tuesday morning's wreck on Highway 99 near Sandrini Road that sent a 40-year-old man from Frazier Park to the hospital via chopper. The Highway Patrol says he flipped the truck and landed in a vineyard. The identity of a man found stabbed to death last week inside an apartment on Taylor Street has been released. The Kern County Coroner's Office.
Yeah, I have it ready and loaded whenever you want it. Also, any music preferences? No, just whatever. Cool.
$875 per year in 5 years' time. Letters of opposition are also being accepted per state law. I'm Chris Davis in the KERN Newsroom with news every half hour and when it breaks on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230. KERN.
Kern Radio. News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230 KERN.
Here's a tale of Tina searching up and down for decent GLP-1s, but got spun around.
Till Good RX wrote in, hey, we got something new. GLP-1 prescriptions, all FDA approved.
Brand name meds, no flags in a red.
Clear pricing from the start. None of those hidden fees in your cart.
Delivered to your door or pick up same day. Darn tootin'.
Save time and money on prescriptions.
I put it to goodrx.com/weight loss. GoodRx is not insurance.
This message comes from Viking, committed to exploring the world in comfort. Journey through the heart of Europe on an elegant Viking longship with thoughtful service, destination-focused dining, and cultural enrichment on board and on shore. With small ships that bring travelers closer to the destination, there's more time to explore, and every Viking voyage is all-inclusive, with no children and no casinos. Discover more at Viking.com.
When the dollar's convertibility into gold ended in 1971, gold was fixed at $35 an ounce. Fast forward to today, and the US dollar has lost over 85% of its purchasing power. Meanwhile, gold has increased in value by over 12,000%. Central banks are buying gold at record levels. Major firms are holding significant positions in gold. And I choose to buy gold from Birch Gold Group. Stan Bongino, and it all starts with education. Birch Gold just announced their Learn and Earn Precious Metals event. This free online event rewards you for learning the basics of investing in precious metals. Sign up to get free silver on your next purchase if you qualify. And you can get even larger incentives as you go. The more you learn, the more you can earn. But act now. This special event only runs through April 30th. So text my name, Dan, to the number 989898 to join Birch Gold's Learn and Earn Precious Metals event by April 30th. Text Dan to 989898 today. Message and data rates may apply.
The Ralph Bailey Show, weekdays at 3 p.m.
It's that man again. Look what's coming up on the Wednesday TRBS. We'll sit down with Howard Marcus, our former federal agent, and owner-operators of Adaptive Networks, Jennifer and Ryan Van Alstyne, and the folks from Bakersfield College will join us as well. All that, me at 3, TRBS, News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230, streaming live at kernradio.com. I'll see you at 3.
The Ralph Bailey Show, News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230, KERN.
Welcome back to the JR Flores Show. I'm Clayton Campbell, pinch hitting for JR today as he's enjoying himself at the zoo, and hopefully the tigers are contained under the...
I was going to say, you got me worried now, right? I didn't even know they had tigers in Fresno.
I'm pretty sure they do.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a legit zoo up there. Have you been to Calm?
Yes, of course.
Calm it's specifically focused on wildlife that's native to this area. So they have some huge bears out there, and they look pretty content. Like they're probably not motivated enough to escape because they're a little. When I saw them last, they were
babies over there.
They were they looked like a
teddy bears.
Yeah, like a Yogi Bear from the cartoon. Like
exactly.
He's been raiding some picnic baskets, and then their mountain lions are huge up there. I would not want to encounter one of those in the wild. I'll tell you what. I've seen bears in the wild, but I've never seen a mountain lion, fortunately. The bears in the wild look a little hungrier. When we left, we were talking about the outrageous charges against the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC. And let me give you a little bit of background in case you're not familiar with SPLC, so you understand why this is such a big deal, why this is so outrageous. The Southern Poverty Law Center was founded in 1971 in Montgomery by civil rights lawyer Morris Dees. Actually, more than one civil rights lawyer. The other one was a guy named Joe Levin. Their early work was heroic, according to the summary I found on the internet here. I think this comes from their website. They worked on desegregation. They worked on prison reform. They won huge jury verdicts that bankrupted some of the most violent Klan groups in the country. And in the 1980s, they launched a program called Klan Watch, and later an intelligence project to track hate groups in the United States. Now, so far, so good. That's all commendable work. But over time, critics from both the left and the right started to raise red flags. By the 1990s, journalists were already writing that the SPLC had become a highly profitable fundraising machine, sitting on a massive endowment while spending far less on actual programs than most charities. In 2019, the organization fired co-founder Morris Dees amid explosive allegations of sexual harassment and racial discrimination. inside the very building that fights those things. Staff revolts followed, and several top leaders resigned. An even bigger controversy, the SPLC's infamous hate map. They've labeled hundreds of organizations as hate groups. Sometimes these are mainstream conservative or Christian groups, and that list has been used by media, tech companies, and even law enforcement. Critics say that it exaggerates threats, smears legitimate policy disagreements as hate, and has inspired real-world violence. Former employees have called SPLC a scam designed to scare Northern donors into writing bigger checks. The SPLC has paid multi-million-dollar settlements after wrongly labeling people as extremists. And I know that there was, I can't remember the name of the organization, there was one Christian family-focused organization where they had a shooter, and I believe it was in Washington, D.C., who came in and started shooting up the place because he found him on SPLC's so-called hate map, claiming that they were a hate group. You know who else was on their hate map or what their hate group list? It was Turning Point USA. And we know what happened to Charlie Kirk. He was murdered by someone who thought he was an extremist bigot. And he was on SPLC's list. So you see this as a list of people that are, Charlie Kirk was no bigot. He was no racist. And he was murdered because people smeared him as such. And SPLC is guilty of that smearing. Now, how does this kind of scheme work? Americans have a conscience for racism. Now, if you go to a Democrat Party meeting and you ask them about America's history with racism, they will tell you our country is founded on racism, that we invented slavery, that we're the worst country in the history of the world when it comes to racism. That's what they tell you. The reality is, our country was founded on principles that were radical at the time of our founding. The idea that you would have people who are actual slave owners sign their names to a document that said, all men are created equal and are endowed by their creator with inalienable rights. That was a radical and outrageous thing to happen. Now, you can't snap your fingers and change the minds of everybody in a country overnight. I guess unless you're canceling Cesar Chavez. But in normal contexts, you can't do that. It takes a long time. And so the vision that was set forth by our founders has taken generations to be realized. And now the United States is the freest, most prosperous, safest, and least racist society in the world. If you want to experience racism, go to China, go to Russia, go to the Middle East. You will be shocked at how people treat each other in those countries. It makes what we pretend to be racism in the United States look like nothing. Now, I'm not saying there's no racism here. There always is. People have a fallen nature. And although every human being was created in the image of God and has equal dignity, and our founding documents recognize that, people also have a sin nature, and they are, by their nature, inclined to hate their neighbor. And it takes the grace of God to prevent that or to temper that. And it's by God's grace that we live in a society where our institutions are on this foundation that all men are created equal, created by God in God's image. And so, with this as our background, we all have a conscience for it. We all know that in our history, there have been racist outrage. There's been the racism that we saw during the civil rights movement, and the Jim Crow laws, and going back to the slavery era, the Jim Crow South and the post-slavery era. There has always been racism in our country, but what do we have? We've had a steady march in the right direction. As Dr. King said, the arc of history bends toward justice. Now, I don't know if he was making an eschatological argument there about the second coming of Christ and final justice being done in the final judgment, but he's right about that. And we are moving that way as a society, but we still have a conscience for it. And so organizations like the SPLC and the Democratic Party They like to play on our conscience. And so they want to manipulate people and tell people, if you don't see things our way, you're a racist. You're a bigot. You're a terrible person, like those villains of yesteryear. The people that used to lynch escaped slaves. The people that used to lynch black people in the South who would vote after the Civil War. The Klansmen, the Nazis. They will smear you. They will accuse you of being one of those people if you don't agree with them on every political issue, because they know we have a conscience for it. And then they ask for money. They ask for money. They play on our consciences for money. So tell me what's worse. You know, it's pretty bad to see somebody like Bernie Madoff go out there and scam people out of money because they're investing in a business opportunity, a fake business opportunity. He lies to them about what he's doing with the money. He steals the money from them. He diverts it to his own purposes and then leaves all these people out in the cold. That's pretty bad. Everybody would agree with that. That's terrible. And he's playing on the profit motive, the motive of people to make themselves more comfortable, to invest their money and have a return and make a profit. It's bad enough to play on that motive. But when the motive is altruistic or charitable, you're inspired to do something nice for someone else. You're inspired to help someone less fortunate than you. You're inspired to fight an evil that exists in the world. And you take your hard-earned money and you donate it to that cause. And then they take it and they steal it from you or divert it for some other purpose. There's something particularly disgusting about that. It's really gross. It's bad enough to commit fraud of any kind, but to play on somebody's conscience and to play on someone's generosity is a little bit worse than just playing on somebody's profit motive. It's all bad. There's no good reason to commit fraud. But that's what's going on here. And we've got this history of people making the same allegation. People on the left saying that they're just raising money for themselves. Remember the Black Lives Matter scandal, the lady that started that organization. She lived in a mansion and had a bunch of cars and gave herself $1 million salary. That was uncovered. And it was the same thing. She saw an opportunity to play on the consciences of Americans on the issue of race. The fact that Americans have such a conscience is comforting to me because it proves that we're not the racist country that the Democrats would have us believe. If we were a racist country, appeals to our egalitarianism, appeals to our desire for equality would fall on deaf ears, and no one would make the donation, and no one would be manipulated that way. But the fact that we fall for it, to me, is proof that we're not a racist country. All right, it's time for a break. We'll be back shortly. I'm Clayton Campbell, pinch hitting for J.R. Flores.
Kern Radio, News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230, KERN. First Look with Scott Cox, mornings 6 to 9 a.m.
On the Thursday edition of the First Look program, we'll see how the city council meeting went about the sewage rates. Apparently, the Iranians have nicked a couple of more ships in the Strait of Hormuz. We'll tell you how you could buy Phil Collins suspenders for a good cause. We'll have the latest and state-of-the-art news, traffic, and weather. It's all happening 6 to 9 a.m. right here at News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230 KERN.
News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230 KERN.
Are you craving a mouthwatering sandwich that's packed with flavor? Then look no further than Caesar's Deli, where they craft some of the best sandwiches in town. Sink your teeth into our signature classic, Caesar's Special, featuring 2 kinds of salami, premium ham, and the irresistible taste of Nona's secret meat sauce. It's a sandwich experience that you won't forget. But that's not the only sandwich they offer. No. Satisfy your craving with a savory smoked turkey sandwich, or indulge yourself in the loaded pastrami, or for the adventurous eater, they offer pickled tongue. And here's the best part. Caesar's Deli has incredible lunch specials designed to fill you up without emptying your wallet. Plus, did you know that Caesar's Deli has a full-service deli offering a variety of over 60 meats and cheeses? It's a sandwich lover's paradise, and that's why Caesar's Deli has been a local favorite and proudly serving Bakersfield since 1971. Visit Caesar's Deli today and taste the difference for yourself. Located on the corner of Brim Hall and Callaway behind the beautiful water fountain.
Hey man, how's business going these days?
Oh, not that good. I'm really struggling to find qualified employees for my business.
Oh, really? Have you tried reaching out to Employers Training Resource? They understand that having the right staff can significantly impact your company.
Really? How can they assist me?
Well, they promoted my jobs, held a recruitment, and pre-screened my job applicants, and they even set up the interviews, all at no cost. And they even offer financial hiring incentives like on-the-job training.
Wow, that sounds great. How do I get this?
Simple. All you have to do is call Employers Training Resource at 661-325-HIRE. That's 661-325-4473. Or visit their website at employerstrainingresource.com.
This Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act Equal Opportunity Employer Program is funded by the U.S. Department of Labor's Employment and Training Administration. For full federal funding disclosure details, visit employerstrainingresource.com/WDD/federal-funding-disclosure. Auxiliary aids and services available upon request.
We've all been there. Sleepless nights, mind racing, wondering if your business's security service is really protecting what matters. At Bay Alarm, we can put your security insecurities to bed. Video security, burglar alarms, fire alarms, access control, 24/7 monitoring, and more. Our advanced technology and personalized support ensure you can rest easy, knowing we're here for you, your people, and your business. Visit bayalarm.com to talk to a local security expert. Bay Alarm, we got you.
Hey, it's that man again, Ralph Bailey. You're listening to the JR Show on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230 KERN. Keep it locked. TRBS coming up at 3.
Welcome back, radio friends. Clayton Campbell here, standing in for J.R. Flores, who's enjoying a well-deserved day off, visiting the zoo. And here we are talking about this indictment that just dropped against the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center. You know, I mentioned earlier that according to the indictment, one of the racists or white supremacists or whatever you want to call them that they were giving money to was a guy that helped them organize this kind of racist counter protest or protest at the Charlottesville incident in 2017. And I described it as the Fine People hoax. And I wanted to explain that because I think I moved past it without explaining it. Remember, the media told us for years, and they still tell us, you might even think that you remember hearing President Trump, refer to the racists at the Charlottesville incident as fine people. Remember that? If you listen to the actual clip of President Trump speaking, he was talking about the debate over removing the Confederate statue in Charlottesville. And he said there were very fine people on both sides. And then he immediately followed up by saying, I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists because they should be condemned totally. So he said that. That was the clip. He said, he's talking about the debate over the statue. There are fine people on both sides. And then he specifically made it clear that he wasn't referring to those people because they're not fine people at all. They should be totally condemned, and they are by any reasonable person. And then what did the media do? They edited the clip to make it sound like Trump was talking about the white nationalists, calling them fine people. And it was just like the whole thing with the Sarah Palin skit on SNL, where they had Tina Fey pretending to be Sarah Palin in a funny sketch where she says, I can see Alaska from my back door or my back porch or whatever it was. And then people now attribute that as a quote, an actual quote of Sarah Palin when she never said anything like that. So it's the same thing with this fine people hoax. And that was the thing that Joe Biden claimed was his motivation for running for president. The Democrats got a ton of mileage out of the fine people hoax. It was a total scam. And it was one of the kind of a tipping point for a lot of people when they lost faith in the mainstream media because of the way in which it misreported what President Trump actually said. For the record, I don't believe we should have statues of Confederate generals or Confederates. I think they were traitors and they should be totally condemned, and we should not memorialize them with statues. That's my opinion. They were, by the way, the Democrats all over the South during the 1920s and 30s, and trying to gain political traction in the South, Democrats went around putting up statues of Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis and Stonewall Jackson and other heroes of the Confederacy in order to appeal to the racists in the South. So it's really rich for them to claim that it's the Republicans that were doing that when the Republicans passed the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments, Republicans that passed the Civil Rights Act, and Republicans that opposed the Jim Crow laws in the South. In fact, Ulysses Grant sent the cavalry to track down and defeat the Ku Klux Klan. who were terrorizing the South after the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were passed, freeing the slaves, guaranteeing civil rights to all Americans. And it was only at the insistence of the Democrats after the 1876 election that federal troops were withdrawn from the South. Democrats have a long and shameful history. They should embarrass them. By the way, if you want to call in, I'll be here for the second hour as well. If you want to call in, our number here is 842-5376. If you want to argue with me about statues of Robert E. Lee or Jefferson Davis, I'd be happy to argue with you. Now, as a defense attorney, I cannot ignore the potential defenses that SPLC will raise, and I want to give them fair treatment when we discuss this case against them. They're already pushing back against the charges. They're claiming that the charges are false and politically motivated, which seems like an obvious thing to claim in this era of politically inspired prosecutions. If you want to look back at the Biden administration, you'll see several examples of that. But their defense really boils down to a couple things. Number one, they're claiming that this so-called informant program was a legitimate and dangerous intelligence operation, so they couldn't disclose the names of these participants. And then they also claimed that this ruse of hiding payments through shell accounts wasn't fraud, it was just security for that intelligence operation. And they insist that the program saved lives by preventing violence, and that no donor was actually deceived because the overall mission of SPLC was still fighting hate. So that is their defense. Now, that might be enough when you're talking about the issue of the material misrepresentations. Although I think that if I were one of the donors to SPLC, I would not expect my money to be handed off to literal Klansmen and Nazis. I mean, that would be that'd be the opposite of what I was intending to do with my donation. You know, if you want to put this in perspective, many of you may remember in 2015, there was an investigative journalist by the name of David Daleiden. And he had an organization that conducted, they were called the Center for Medical Progress, and they conducted these undercover multi-year investigations of organizations like Planned Parenthood. And what Daleiden did is he posed as a buyer of fetal tissue and went in to meet with Planned Parenthood officials and people that employees of these clinics, abortion clinics, and recorded secret video of them, which appeared to be negotiations for selling body parts of aborted babies to these medical research companies, which is illegal. So he does all this investigation, and he was prosecuted later. Several states investigated this, and they couldn't really verify, at least with strong enough evidence to prosecute, any of the things that he claimed to uncover. Instead, he got prosecuted in California and in Texas for violating rules against secretly recording people. And recently he had his expungement granted in California, so it's off of his record now. But the point is, this was an undercover operation conducted by a pro-life activist in order to uncover criminal activity of Planned Parenthood. So what I see this is kind of like the flip side of this SPLC. They're claiming, well, our mission is to advance more politically left-leaning priorities. We're going to go after these white supremacists. We're going to do it undercover. Okay, so imagine if you're a pro-lifer, David Daleiden comes to you and says, "I'd like you to donate money to me to help me catch Planned Parenthood red-handed selling fetal tissue on the black market, which is a violation of federal law. Now, will you give me a donation for that?" And you say, "Yeah, I support that effort." And so you donate money to him. And then he takes that money and he actually pays for an abortion with it. Now, would you be betrayed? Would you feel betrayed by that? I absolutely would. I would, if he took the money that I gave him to help advance the pro-life cause, and he took that money and he paid for an abortion with it, I would absolutely object to that. Or he gave it to an abortion doctor to perform an abortion. I would be absolutely defrauded by that. I would say, wait a minute here, that was a material misrepresentation. And he says, no, I only did it as part of this undercover scheme to catch them red-handed committing a crime. That wouldn't be a good enough explanation for me. I would say, no. You misled me. When you made that demand, when you made that solicitation for that donation, I gave it to you intending to fight something, and you used that money to pay for the very thing that I was fighting against. So that's kind of the same as an analogous type of scenario that I think that SPLC may have a hard time, at least politically, explaining to their donors that if they're taking money to fight racism and they're actually paying racists to be racist and do racist stuff, that's fraud. So I don't know. Maybe this claim that they're just involved in an intelligence operation or helping the feds find domestic terrorists, prosecute. Maybe that's true, and that'll all come out in the discovery process. We will have to wait and see. In the meantime, if you're inclined to purchase a book from their fake bookstore, you're not going to be able to. So let's see here. What else would they possibly say in response, or what are they saying? Well, actually, let's talk about their motives. I got about 2 minutes left. Why would they do this? I've kind of alluded to it already. It's money. They're playing on the consciences of Americans to solicit donations. They've already been accused by people that used to work for their organization of just being about raising the money and enriching themselves. So maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they want to stoke the fires of racism to generate more donations. And the more dramatic the examples of hate, the more likely they are to get donations. Also, maybe it's just that they've been too successful. When you kind of help put out the fires of racism over the decades, you should take the win, but we all want to be needed still. And so if we're not needed anymore, then we don't get any more money. And so they want to, show that racism is alive and well. Thomas Sowell says that racism is alive and well, but it's on life support, supported by the Democratic Party, people who get political power and money by keeping it alive. All right, that's it for this hour. I'm Clayton Campbell, standing in for J.R. Flores. We'll see you after the break.
Kern Radio, AM 1230, KERN, 96.1 FM, K241CI Bakersfield, an American General Media station.
News this hour from Town Hall. I'm Keith Peters in Washington. There are fresh doubts about the status of peace talks between the United States and Iran. White House correspondent Greg Clugston reports.
Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard fired on ships in the Strait of Hormuz a day after President Trump extended a ceasefire, although the American blockade of all Iranian ports remains in place. The president is giving Iran time to develop a unified proposal, but Iran has yet to decide whether to join a new round of talks. A spokesman with Iran's foreign ministry accused American negotiators of showing disregard and lack of good faith. Greg Clugston, Washington.
Another state is moving ahead with a new congressional map for November.
Voters in Virginia have approved a congressional redistricting plan that could help Democrats win up to 4 additional U.S. House seats in this year's midterm elections.
We don't have the population of Northern Virginia.
Ruth Ann McCartney voted in South Hill.
As a rural area, we just need to be heard.
She was a no.
I just want to be even.
Tangerine Gost voted yes.
Democrats and Republicans, to me, they're going to do what they're going to want to do anyway.
Joanne Lucy's theory?
I'm wondering if maybe it's just because of Trump.
But their votes may not be the final say. The question still faces legal challenges, including before the state Supreme Court. I'm Ben Thomas.
Wildfires are intensifying across the southeastern U.S. They've destroyed nearly 50 homes in Georgia. The fires also have forced evacuations and school closures. Some of the biggest blazes are along Georgia's coast and around Jacksonville, Florida. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 340 points today. The NASDAQ Composite Index rose 397. The S&P 500 advanced 73, and oil nearing $93 a barrel. More at townhall.com.
Advantage Gold, America's #1 precious metals company, is sounding the alarm that a storm is coming and that now is the time to diversify your portfolio before it's too late. That's why we're offering an emergency gold and silver protection kit valued at $49, absolutely free for anyone who calls today at 800-900-8000. This kit includes critical information for investors with a retirement account seeking to own physical gold and silver, but want to do it tax and penalty free. Advantage Gold has helped investors protect and secure their wealth with physical gold and silver since 2014. Call Advantage Gold now at 800-900-8000 and we'll rush your emergency gold and silver kit plus a free copy of Ken Rogoff's book, Our Dollar, Your Problem. See how gold and silver can help you protect and secure your wealth with the help of Advantage Gold. Results vary. Consult your tax advisor before investing. Call 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000.
From the KERN Newsroom, your live and local news update.
A hit and run in South Bakersfield, but the driver came back. I'm Chris Davis. That happened Tuesday night about 9 on Feliz Drive when Bakersfield PD got the call. It was for a hit and run, and when they got there, they found a woman near death in the street, and they were told that the woman had been laying in the street for reasons not yet known to investigators when she was run over. The woman died later at the hospital. The driver returned to the scene of the wreck and cooperated with police. They have not announced any arrests, and they also have not released the name of the person killed. That is expected to come later from the Kern County Coroner's Office. The problem with catching the person who hit someone on Beale Avenue Monday night and then left the scene is that the witnesses couldn't give police a consistent answer about what the car looked like. That happened just north of East California Avenue. Police say the person who was hit was not in the crosswalk and had their back to traffic. That person had moderate injuries. $115 million is the amount of money that Democratic candidate for Governor Tom Steyer has put into TV and other advertising, reports the AP. That is more than 3 times what his nearest Democratic opponent has spent. But the polls from this week show he is still behind Republicans Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco. Steyer, who is a billionaire and is putting his own money into his campaign, is ahead of Xavier Becerra, but not by much. It's too expensive and there weren't enough volunteers. That's the reasoning behind the cancellation of Shafter's 3rd of July celebration, according to the Chamber of Commerce there. They say in a prepared statement that they reached out for help from some community organizations, but they just couldn't muster enough help to put it on safely and successfully. I'm Chris Davis in the KERN Newsroom with news every half hour and when it breaks on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230. KERN.
Please.
Mr. Flores, turn this up. Thank you very much.
I had 3 more seconds and I had the whole thing. I was supposed to have 3 minutes.
Sir, thank you. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
It's the JR Show. From Studio 99 at the American General Media Complex, here is your host, JR.
He was born in San Diego, studied nuclear engineering at one of the most demanding institutions in the world, West Point. And when he graduated, he didn't go to work for a power company or a defense contractor or for a shipyard or a university. He joined the Army and he went to war. He was 23 years old, younger than most law school graduates, and he was commanding a remote combat outpost in the Arghandab Valley in Afghanistan, a place so remote that you could only reach it by helicopter. There he commanded 350 American and Afghan personnel and managed $100 million in military equipment. And the nearest help? A long way away. The details of his action are still classified, but he saw enough danger to make an ordinary man say, I think I've done enough. But he called it a beginning. He volunteered for something harder. He knew that he had more to offer, so he volunteered for Special Forces selection, the kind of training that breaks men who thought they were unbreakable and turns hundreds of the toughest men into washouts. But he earned that Green Beret, and he went back to Afghanistan where he led an operational detachment Alpha, an A team, a team of elite Green Berets. And he led them into the kind of situations that never make the evening news, but often make widows. But he came home, and he came home with 2 Bronze Stars. With his wife, he began a new kind of challenge. No one was shooting at him this time, but it was a challenge nonetheless. You see, he wasn't a rich man and had no friends in venture capital. He and his wife started a manufacturing business in a double-wide trailer in rural North Carolina. 2 people, a kitchen table, and the kind of stubborn belief that if you make something good, people will find and buy your products. They turned it into a state-of-the-art firearms manufacturing firm that makes equipment for his brothers in the Green Berets and in other military units, from a double-wide to a factory floor. But he didn't just get comfortable in his success. An ordinary man might say, I think I've done enough, and ride it out into retirement. But in 2021, like the rest of us, he was watching television, and he watched his country leave Afghanistan the way children abandon a campsite in the rain, in a hurry, in the dark, leaving things behind that you can't get back. And that did something to him. You see, he couldn't stand to see the blood of his countrymen spilled and then left behind like it didn't matter. He couldn't stand to see his country humiliated. And so he sought another kind of action, the kind where they attack you with words and commercials instead of rockets and bullets. He ran for Congress in 2022. He lost. But the man who studied nuclear engineering and didn't quit, survived Afghanistan and didn't quit, who passed through Green Beret selection and didn't quit politics either. He ran for Congress again in 2024, and he won. Today, he serves North Carolina's 10th Congressional District. He sits on the House Armed Services Committee, Special Operations and Intelligence, and the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, where his nuclear engineering degree finally gets its day in the sun. West Point, Green Beret, Afghanistan, Bronze Star, twice, entrepreneur, and congressman. The man who started a business in a trailer near Fort Bragg, his name is Pat Harrigan, and he's coming to Bakersfield. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the J.R. Flores Show. I'm Clayton Campbell. I'm pinch hitting again today for your host, J.R. Flores, and I had to share that with you. Pat Harrigan is someone I recently discovered. He's a first-term congressman, but he is going places. He will be in Congress for as long as he wants to be, and he's the kind of guy that I don't mind having him there for a while. He is a man to watch. Half of Congress is populated by half-wits and dementia patients. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't have anything against half-wits or dementia patients. I just don't want them in Congress. So it's refreshing to see someone like Harrigan, a very, very bright person who has already served his country so well, stuck his neck out literally. He's been shot at for us, but he's also a genius, and he's in Congress, serving next to our very own exceptionally bright and talented congressman, my good friend, Vince Fong. Now, Vince is bringing Harrigan to Bakersfield for the Kern County Republican Party's annual Lincoln Day dinner on April 30th. That's just next week, a week from tomorrow. This year, it's a special celebration. We're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. It's America's birthday. If you haven't purchased tickets yet, you better get on that because they're going fast. Call the Kern County Republican Party at 661-327-9321 so that you can hear Congressman Harrigan speak and very possibly get to meet him. I'm looking forward to it. You know, last year I got to sit next to Wayne Mullen, who's now the Secretary of Homeland Security guest speaker. So here. And sometimes there are people that we bring them in before it's cool, right? We get these guys that later go on to become something even bigger. And, you know, Mark Wayne's a great example of that. Make sure you call soon for your ticket. By the way, does anybody out there know? And our phone number here is 842-5376. Do you know, without looking it up, without pulling up your phone and asking the question, do you know off the top of your head, we have one president in the history of the United States whose birthday was the 4th of July? Does anybody know who that was? And then 2 presidents who died on the 4th of July. I'll leave that out there. If you think of it, call in. No cheating, though. No cheating. Don't look it up if you know. If you have to look it up, that's okay. Just don't call in and claim you figured you knew it already. Do you remember the Got Milk commercial where the guy has the painting of the duel between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton, and he's listening to the radio program?
I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, he's eating a cookie. This is back in the 90s when they made really good commercials, right?
Of course, yeah.
And he's eating this cookie, and he's got the radio show, and the guy says, for the $1 million question, who killed Alexander Hamilton in the duel? And the guy grabs the phone and he's dialing it, but he's got a mouthful of cookies, so he goes to try to drink, but his milk is gone. He's out of milk. So he tries to say Aaron Burr with his mouth full, and they don't understand, and he misses out on the opportunity. And this isn't quite that cool. You have time to go get a glass of milk, but see if you can figure out who was the only president born on the 4th of July, and who were the 2 presidents who died on the 4th of July. And I'll give you a hint. The 2 presidents that died on the 4th of July died on the same 4th of July. So see if you can figure that out. But don't forget, Kern County Republican Party Lincoln Day event, celebration of America's birthday, and this already legendary Congressman, Pat Harrigan, who's going to be here to be our guest speaker. And he's just getting started in politics. I mean, this guy could be, who knows, maybe he'll be the president someday. And he'll think back on when he was in Afghanistan getting shot at. You know, I was trying to get the specifics. What was his military action? How did he earn these 2 Bronze Stars? Well, all that stuff's still classified. One thing that's not classified, though, is his combat action badge. So he's been shot at. And knowing the Green Berets, and I've met a few of them too. My dad was a Green Beret. They would shoot back. So I'm sure he didn't just stand there taking the fire. I'm sure they gave better than they got. Make sure you're here. Now, it's harder and harder to get Republicans elected to Congress. I don't know if you saw the news last night in Virginia. There was a ballot referendum that passed. It barely passed, but it passed. Redistricting Virginia in the same manner in which they redistricted California to disenfranchise all of the Republicans. You know, Virginia has about 45% Republican vote in the last presidential election, somewhere in that neighborhood. Now they have 1 out of 10 congressional districts will be a red district, and the rest of them are blue districts. Kind of like California, where we had, what do we have? I think 8 Republicans right now out of our 50 plus districts. And with the redistricting, it's going to cut our numbers down to 4 or 5. It's just an outrageous method of disenfranchising voters for the Democrats to draw up these ridiculous districts so they can carve out extra votes for themselves in Congress. They can't seem to win on the merits. Now they'll blame us. They'll say, "Oh, Texas did it first." Well, Texas probably shouldn't have done a midterm redistricting. They should do this only every 10 years when they have the census. But Texas's was nowhere near as egregious as the California and Virginia maps. And if you want to look at a really outrageous gerrymandering map, look up Illinois. It is absolutely preposterous. All right, we're running up against time for a break here. We'll be back shortly. I'm Clayton Campbell, standing in for J.R. Flores.
Kern Radio, News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230, KERN. The Ralph Bailey Show, weekdays at 3 p.m.
So a woman gets stinking, falling down drunk, literally, on a Carnival cruise. She had 15 shots of tequila over a 6-hour period. Tried to get back to her cab and damn near broke her neck. She sued Carnival. Who do you think won? The lady. They gave her $300,000 for over-serving her.
The Ralph Bailey Show, News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230, KERN.
Are gas prices the final straw to break the camel's back? Are you drowning in debt so that more gas means you can't pay for other essential stuff? Are you getting collection calls, emails, and texts on credit cards, medical debt, loans, buy now, pay later, and so forth? The attorneys at Clean Slate BK Group have a solution to make the nightmare go away. CSBK can stop the harassment, get rid of the balances, maybe even get your car payment reduced, and get you reset in the right financial direction for a fraction of the time and money of a debt settlement program. A Chapter 7 BK takes about 6 months, and at the end, the financial straws will be off your back. Log on to CSBK.com and read what real people just like you have to say about what CSBK has done for them. This is an attorney advertisement. Your results may vary, and prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome. Clean Slate BK Group PC, located at 7 Penn Plaza, Suite 601, New York, 10001, is responsible for the content of this ad. For more information, visit CSBK.com. That's CSBK.com to end your financial nightmares.
Step into the spotlight at the all-new and always thrilling Hard Rock Casino Tejon, just 15 miles south of Bakersfield. Play your favorites across over 2,000 slot machines, plus blackjack, roulette, and craps. And with Unity, whatever you do, you get rewarded. Play here and redeem exceptional dining and energy only Hard Rock can deliver. Casino Tejon. It all happens here. Must be 21 or older. Concerned about your gambling? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
If you have unfiled taxes or are in debt to the IRS, this is important news. Did you know the IRS has programs specifically designed to help people struggling with tax debt? Powerful tax assistance programs that can save you thousands if you qualify. No one knows these programs better than the experts at Optima Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax resolution firm, A-rated by the Better Business Bureau. Their award-winning tax attorneys and licensed professionals have resolved over $3 billion of tax debt for their clients. One call to Optima can start the process, helping to put an end to your worries about wage garnishment, asset seizure, and other aggressive IRS actions. Find the best options to solve your tax problems. Call the experts at Optima Tax Relief today for a free consultation.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Attention truck, SUV, minivan, car owners, and RVs. If it's got an engine, then you need Kern Oil Change. Kern Oil Change keeps it running right. No appointments, no long wait, just fast, honest service from guys who get it. They top off your fluids, check your tires, all done while you chill in your ride or in our waiting room. Kern Oil Change is built for people who don't have time to waste. 2 locations to serve you, 3706 Coffee Road and 5651 Auburn Street. Kern Oil Change is open 7 days a week. Get in, get out, get going. Follow us on Instagram for additional savings.
It's that man again, Ralph Bailey. You're listening to the JR Show on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230 KERN. Keep it locked. TRBS coming up at 3.
Welcome back to the JR Flores Show. I'm Clayton Campbell, pinch hitting for JR today. Just before the break, we were talking about gerrymandering and the Virginia election there was a referendum passed yesterday at the encouragement of former President Barack Obama and other Democrats, with money from all over the country pouring in to redistrict Virginia. And so they went from 7 Democrats, it was 6 Democrats and I think 5 Republican seats in Virginia. And now it looks like it's going to be 10 Democrat seats and 1 Republican. So +4 for the Democrats after the redistricting. And if you look at the map, the before and after map, and you see kind of where all the red votes are in Virginia, you see a lot of those people have been kind of just completely cut out of it. They're completely disenfranchised. They don't have any representation in Congress because they're cut out by the way they carved up the districts. Now, what is gerrymandering? Let's talk about this. The original Constitution in Article 1 set forth the manner in which the representation in Congress would be divided. It was by population, and they didn't put a cap on how many congressmen there could be. By later amendment, the Constitution was modified to cap the House of Representatives at 435 members divided by population among the various states. Of course, every state gets 2 senators, so there's no cap on how many senators there could be because there's technically no cap on how many states we could add to the union. But as of now, we have 50 states, we have 100 senators. The House of Representatives has 435 members divided by population. Now, every state gets at least 1 member of the House of Representatives, no matter how sparsely populated. So Wyoming, for example, has such a small population, they only get 1 member of the House of Representatives. But the rest of the country, or the states that have more of a population, they get one per every, I think it's like 960,000 people or something like that. So California gets 50 plus members of the House of Representatives. Virginia gets 11. Florida has like 30. I don't know exactly, but they're apportioned by population. Now, it's well known. This has been established. And the Census Bureau has acknowledged errors were made in the 2020 census that favored blue states. So they overestimated populations in blue states and underestimated populations in red states. I think there was one blue state that had an underrepresented population, but mostly these so-called errors favored Democrats nationally. So the Democrats ended up with more representation in Congress as a result than they would have gotten if the census had properly been conducted. So based on those errors, President Trump felt that Republicans had received kind of unfair treatment in the apportionment of districts, and he encouraged Texas to gerrymander its districts. Now, California already had strongly gerrymandered districts. We have this supposedly or so-called, bipartisan commission, citizens commission to create fair congressional districts. But let me ask you this. If President Trump received about 40% or just under 40% of the vote in the 2024 election, or even the 2020 election for that matter, in California, why is it that we have less than 10% of the representation in Congress? Well, the answer to that is easy. It's that the supposedly bipartisan redistricting commission has carved up the districts to favor Democrats so that they lump Republicans into districts. You know, not that I'm complaining about our district here with Vince Vaughn. He has a very strong, very, very strong foundation under him with a lopsided number of Republicans in his district. But these other districts are carved up. They're carved up in ways that spread out the Democrat vote so that they get more of the seats, and they lump all the Republicans into as few seats as possible. So that's how they that's how they pull this off. So every state is allowed to apportion its congressional seats however it sees fit. The Constitution doesn't tell each state how to draw this up. Now, there are some restrictions. You can't draw up congressional districts specifically to get a particular race. You can't do it on racist grounds where you're trying to exclude people of of any particular race or favor people of any particular race. Now, I'm sure that's been done under other pretenses in various districts, but Texas went ahead and changed its districts. It's normally done after the census, which is done every 10 years. So 2020, we had the census. It won't happen again until 2030. But Texas went ahead and redistricted. So California pretending that somehow, Gavin Newsom pretending that somehow Democrats are victims of Texas doing a less egregious version of what California had already done. Newsom gets this ballot measure to modify California's constitution temporarily to allow this new redistricting. And so we're going to be even more repressed in this state. Now, it doesn't violate federal constitutional principles, but you have other states like Indiana, for example, where the Republicans in charge are more fair-minded. And so they refuse to redistrict, even though they could, and eliminate all the Democrat representation in Congress from the state of Indiana, but they chose not to do that. Illinois also has a really bad set of districts. Virginia now, New York, the blue states are already heavily gerrymandered. The history of this goes all the way back to 1812. The governor of Massachusetts, he was part of Jefferson's Republican Party, or they called themselves the Democratic Republicans, which is kind of funny, confusing because they don't really have a connection to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party as we know them today. But the two main parties in the United States were the Jeffersonian Republicans versus the Federalists. And Eldridge Gerry, the governor of Massachusetts, he signed a bill that basically set a Senate map that packed Federalist voters into a few districts while spreading his party's voters across many others. Now, this is for the state legislature. This wasn't a congressional race, so it's the state Senate map. They were dividing up their state Senate. And one of the districts was kind of weirdly shaped. It looked kind of like a salamander. So political cartoons were drawn, and they called it the gerrymander. It was a newspaper in Boston that published that. Now, that practice didn't originate with Eldridge Gerry. That's just where the name came from. So that's become something that every legislative majority has sought to do over the years. And there have been various ideas floated for how to make it more fair. But how do you do that when you always have one party that's in control? Maybe if you have you have a bicameral legislature, like I think 49 states have a bicameral legislature where you have two bodies, a state Senate and a state House of Representatives, or an assembly as we call them here. I want to say it's Nebraska that has only one legislative body, but I could be wrong. Most of the states you have two bodies, and so you could have one controlled by the Republicans, the other one controlled by the Democrats, and they'd have to cooperate. When I was a kid, this may be a surprise to you, I was a little bit of a nerd, and I had a copy. I lived in Illinois. I had a copy of what was called the Illinois Government Handbook, and it had a little biography of every member of the state legislature, and the state constitution printed in it. And there was a description of the procedure that they used to employ, and that was the legislature would have two members of each party from each chamber. So we're talking about 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans from the House, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans from the Senate, and those 8 people would get together. It was deliberately an even number. They had to have a consensus to draw up the districts as fairly as possible. And if they couldn't reach an agreement, each party would submit a name to the Secretary of State, who would put that name in Abraham Lincoln's hat and then reach in blindly and draw a name from the hat. And that name would be the person who drew up all the districts. And after the 1990 census, the Democrats and Republicans couldn't come to an agreement. Secretary of State, his name was Jim Edgar at the time, he reaches into Abe Lincoln's hat, he pulls out the name, and it's a Republican. So the Republicans for the next 10 years dominated the state legislature and had a majority because they got to gerrymander the state. Now, California just does it that way that's just the way it is, because they have the Democrats have the majority power. There is no consensus required. The criteria they have is arbitrary, and it shouldn't be that way. But anyway, that's why it's hard to get Republicans elected to Congress. It's hard to get people like Pat Harrigan and Vince Vaughn in other states. And it's something that everybody complains about when they're not in power. And when they're in power, they say, hey, that's just how it is. Deal with it. So it's unfair. Gerrymandering, get used to it. I'm Clayton Campbell, standing in for J.R. Flores. We'll be back.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters in Washington. Wildfires are intensifying across the southeastern U.S. They've destroyed about 50 homes in Georgia. The fires also have forced evacuations. Some of the biggest blazes are along Georgia's coast and around Jacksonville, Florida. Drought and strong winds are fueling those fires. Georgia's 2 largest wildfires have burned over 31 square miles. Iran has fired on 3 ships in the Strait of Hormuz and seized 2 of them. The intensification of Iran's assault on shipping in a waterway crucial to global energy supplies comes a day after President Trump extended a ceasefire, but pressed on with an American blockade of Iranian ports. On Wall Street, the Dow by 340 points. The Nasdaq.
My apologies. I just saw your text message. Technically, yes and no. I don't have a logo to be able to put up behind you is the problem. Yeah, no, it's something that kind of popped up not too long ago. So, I figured not.
Hospital. That happened about 9 last night on Felice Drive in South Bakersfield. As far as why she was laying there, police don't know yet. They say the person who hit the woman took off, but later came back and cooperated. The woman's name has not been made public. Shafter is getting more license plate readers and cameras on a vote at the city council Tuesday. They also decided to buy a mobile trailer to read the camera data, and it can be put wherever crime is a problem. A 13-year prison term was handed 25-year-old Jaden Toralba of Bakersfield. He's going up for beating the woman that he was dating and holding a gun to her head 2 years ago. He was found guilty in February. I'm Chris Davis in the KERN newsroom with news every half hour and when it breaks on News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230 KERN.
Kern Radio, News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230 KERN.
Let's be honest, money can feel overwhelming. Markets change, life changes, and most people are left wondering, am I actually on track? That's where MoneyWise comes in. We help people simplify the complex, make smart financial decisions, and move forward with confidence without the jargon, without the pressure. Retirement planning, big life transitions, or just getting organized and knowing where you stand. And now you can find us in a new home, the historic Woolworths building, right in downtown Bakersfield. MoneyWise, clear advice, local roots. Learn more at moneywiseguys.com.
Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through LPL Financial. LPL Financial and MoneyWise Wealth Management are independently owned and operated.
And we're back. Here we are. Rob and Bob from California Fruit Depot. We are going to make the nation's first complete AI commercial.
we are.
Yes, we're going to talk about we're open 9 to 5, 7 days a week. We have great shakes. We have great staff. We have oranges, citrus, nuts, all locally grown. Lots of it all grown. So here's version 1.
California Fruit Depot is located near Bakersfield, California, off the Highway 58. Open 7 days a week, 9 to 5. Top-rated staff, phenomenal shakes and smoothies, sweet citrus, locally grown nuts, and so much more. Rob and Bob, nationally syndicated, locally appreciated radio talents, are their spokespeople. Free lemons are available, free parking, and so much more.
And here's version 2.
Yeehaw! California Fruit Depot, located off Highway 58. Smoke them if you got them. Great staff, wonderful prices, shakes, smoothies.
I do have somebody here that wants to answer your president question.
Days a week, 9 to 5, closed most major holidays.
And for those of you in the 08,
AI is not something you cover with an eye patch. CalFruitDepot.com.
First Look with Scott Cox, mornings 6 to 9 a.m.
On the Thursday edition of the First Look program, we'll see how the city council meeting went about the sewage rates. Apparently, the Iranians have nicked a couple of more ships in the Strait of Hormuz. We'll tell you how you could buy Phil Collins suspenders for a good cause. We'll have the latest and state-of-the-art news, traffic, and weather. It's all happening 6 to 9 a.m. right here at News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230 KERN.
News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230 KERN.
Welcome back, radio friends. This is Clayton Campbell standing in for J.R. Flores. You know where I get that whole, I call people radio friends because of the Three Stooges. You ever seen the episode of the Three Stooges? It's called Microphonies.
Oh, you know what? I have seen this one. Yes.
This is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Of course, the three boys are in the radio station doing construction work, and they mess it up, and they run and hide, and they end up in a broadcasting booth, and they're fooling around as if they're broadcasters. It's hilarious. It may be my favorite episode. All right, so where were we? We were talking about redistricting, gerrymandering, California's unfair advantage that they've gotten for themselves with gerrymandering, and how they cry foul and claim Republicans are disenfranchising people in other states with unfair gerrymanders, when California's Democrats are the guiltiest of all when it comes to that. So what is the solution to this? I don't believe the solution is to simply hope the Democrats will agree to be fair, and hope that they won't continue to gerrymander their states in a lopsided and unfair way, and then in giving us representation in their states. What needs to happen is the lesson needs to be learned the hard way. All of the red states need to outrageously gerrymander themselves in such a lopsided way that the Democrats regret that they started this fight. Well, maybe they didn't even start it. It was started by Eldridge Gerry with the Democratic Republican Party of 1812. But the Democrats are doing it very well today. So that is the lesson that has to be taken away from this. We need to, first of all, make sure that we do the census correctly and we need to make sure that we take full advantage in our red states like Florida, Texas, other places have the advantage. And we need to make sure that we squeeze as many districts out of that as we can. But we're not going to be able to do it midterm. Most of the states aren't going to play ball with that. So until 2030, when we have another census, we're probably stuck with the chaos that we have now. We're stuck with the unfairly apportioned congressional districts that we have now. So we're going to have to endure and do things the hard way. Now, when it comes to your representation and who, oh, by the way, I'm being told that we have someone answering my trivia question.
Yes.
All right. If you recall, before the break, I asked who was the only president of the United States to be born on the 4th of July, and who were the two presidents who died on the 4th of July. And the challenge, of course, this is on your honor. You weren't supposed to look it up. So I'm told we have a caller.
We do.
All right. Who do we have?
James is on the line.
James.
Well, I'm going to tell you that about 40 years ago, probably, Paul Harvey told a story about James Adams and Thomas Jefferson dying on the same day.
John Adams?
John Adams and Thomas Jefferson.
Those were the two presidents who died on the same 4th of July. That is correct.
And we have one or more.
Yes. Well, one more. Oh, yeah, that's right. There was another president, but I can't remember who it was. Tell me.
James Monroe.
James Monroe. That's right. It wasn't the same 4th of July.
No. He was 1831. John Adams and Jefferson died in 1826, 50 years to the day of signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Can you tell me who the other three? We have John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were two of the five men who were on the committee to draft the Declaration. Can you tell me who the other three were?
Oh,
sorry, I didn't give you a preview of that one. So
yeah, I don't know.
If you want to now, what about the president who was born on the 4th of July?
Calvin Coolidge.
That's right, Calvin Coolidge, born on the 4th of July. He was Ronald Reagan's favorite president. Now, do you know who Calvin Coolidge wasn't elected the first time? Do you know which president he succeeded who died in office?
No, I don't. But would it have been Harrison?
No, it was Warren Harding.
Harding, okay.
Yeah, Harding was elected in 1920.
I think Harrison died in office too, didn't he?
Well, there were two Harrisons. There was a William Henry Harrison and a Benjamin Harrison. William Henry Harrison was elected, he was like the 8th or 9th president. He got pneumonia giving a speech on Inauguration Day, and then we were stuck with John Tyler for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And then his grandson, Benjamin Harrison, was elected. He was the guy elected he was the Joe Biden in between the two Trump terms, right? Grover Cleveland, who was elected.
Yeah, you're correct.
Well, congratulations. You have not only answered the question, but you added the third president who died on the 4th of July that I omitted from my question. So you one-upped me. Congratulations, James. Were you named after any of the presidents named James? We've had quite a few.
James Monroe.
You were named after James Monroe?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I personally wasn't named after James Monroe. My great-great-grandfather was named after James Monroe.
I see. And then your family has carried on the lineage. You're named after your great-great-grandfather, who was named after James Monroe. Fantastic. Well, congratulations, James. Thank you.
I'm the fourth, and there's not a fifth.
Well, it has to come to an end at some point, as Louis XIII could attest. Congratulations, James. Thank you for calling. I do appreciate it.
All right. You have a great day, and I've enjoyed listening to you when you fill in.
Oh, thank you. All right. Take care. All right. So we had an answer, and it was more of an answer than I even anticipated because I forgot about James Monroe dying on the 4th of July. Okay. Does anybody else have the answer? Who were the other three authors of the Declaration of Independence? We know that Thomas Jefferson's the guy that wrote it down. He kind of wrote up the final draft. But who were the other people on the committee to draft it? We have John Adams, who's a great attorney and statesman, very well studied. And then Thomas Jefferson, of course, who was a brilliant luminary. But who are the other three guys? All right, call in if you have an answer. Our number is 842-5376. And remember, we're on the honor system here. You're not supposed to look it up. All right, let's go back to gerrymandering. Maybe we finished that. Oh, yeah, we were talking about the importance of choosing your representatives. And when you're in a state where they carve up your congressional district so that you are in such a voiceless minority that you don't really have much, if any, say, then it's kind of discouraging. So when you can look to other things where you do get a say. You know, the way our system works, federalism, we have multiple levels or layers of government. Of course, we have the national federal government, which is set out in the Constitution, our representatives in the U.S. Senate, representatives in the House of Representatives. And then, of course, we have the state legislature, which in California involves a Senate and an assembly. There are twice as many members of the assembly as there are of the Senate. So every Senate district is split in two for two assembly districts. So when they draw up these districts, it's a little harder to gerrymander that many districts. So we have some representation in the state legislature. It's not very much. We have some. You know, I was in Hawaii on vacation a few years ago, and we got to tour the Capitol building, which I know most people don't think of going to a state capitol when they go to Hawaii, but I'm kind of a nerd, and I dragged my family over there. Now, my wife was delighted to go because the building, the Capitol building itself, is a really cool building. It's kind of a modern architecture wonder, and she and I are both fans of that type of architecture. And we went and checked it out, and nobody was there. It was like a ghost town. You know, people that go to Hawaii, they don't visit the state capitol. The assembly and the Senate were not in session, but we ran into this lady who worked for the sergeant at arms for the House of Representatives for the state of Hawaii, and she gave us a tour. And she was delighted that we were there because we wanted to admire the building. And so I found, by the way, that's the secret password to get an unscheduled tour of a government building is to tell one of the employees there how much you admire the building. And then all of a sudden they're very proud of the building they work in, and they'll show you around. I've done this in courthouses all over the country and at the Capitol building in Hawaii. So this lady shows us around, and she shows us these cloakrooms for the different party caucuses. And the Democrat Party caucus room was just crammed with chairs. And on the Republican side, there's like 5 chairs, a sofa, a giant TV, a pool table, a ping pong table, a refrigerator. And the reason is Hawaii's legislature is so lopsided. There's only like 5 Republicans in the House of Representatives. So they got this, but when they built the building, they gave both caucus rooms the same amount of room. So if you're in the Democrat caucus, you go over there, you got to cram in there with everybody else, and there's barely enough room for you to sit down. On the Republican side, there's all kinds of room. Well, California is similar to that in the state legislature, but we get to choose our legislators. And in Kern County, even if you're a Republican who feels voiceless on the statewide level with our U.S. senators or with our governor, we get to choose, and we have some really good candidates that are on the ballot for the different districts that are in Kern County. We have Saul Ione, who's running for the state assembly. We have, I don't know if you've met Nathan Magsig. He's a member of the Board of Supervisors up in Fresno. He's running to replace Shannon Grove, who can't get reelected because she's term limited out. And then, of course, David Couch is running for the assembly seat that Stan Ellis is vacating because I'll tell you about a local measure that is essential to our members of the Board of Supervisors. So I'm Clayton Campbell, pinch hitting for J.R. Flores. We'll be back for our final segment in a few minutes.
Kern Radio, News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230, KERN. The Ralph Bailey Show, weekdays at 3 p.m.
Honor Flight 53, 168 folks flew back on this honor flight. Well, they'll go to all the memorials. They're coming home Wednesday, and I hope you guys will get out to Meadows Field. They'll be touching down around 6:30, and welcome back all our veterans and all our guardians and all the volunteers of Honor Flight. I think the best charity in this community. Get out to Meadows Field and welcome back our veterans.
The Ralph Bailey Show, News Talk 96.1 and AM 1230, KERN.
Oh, it's already Wednesday, which means I can get to the stockyard even sooner. Where's the stockyard? What is the stockyard, you ask? Well, it's a little speakeasy right next to Casey's Steakhouse, 2525 F Street. You wouldn't even know it's there. You're going to see some ropes. You're going to see a carpet. Walk up to the door, ring the doorbell. When they ask you what's the password, tell them, why not JR? They're going to let you in. You're going to walk into one of the finest establishments, not only in Bakersfield, not only in Kern County, but probably all of California. It's like you walk into a time travel. They take you back to the days of Speak Easy. Come on in. You can get appetizers off the menu from Casey's Steakhouse if you're hungry. Have a drink with Haley. Heck, I'll be in there this weekend. They also got live music going. And if you're looking to host a party, they got a banquet room. Maybe you got a birthday, a bridal shower. Get a hold of them over at the Stockyard, 2525 F Street, open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 6 p.m. to close. Come hang out with me and Haley. It's the Stockyard.
What are you doing every day to support your liver? If you enjoy sweets, fast food, alcohol, or take any medications, that's a vital question to ask. Hi, I'm Sherry Torkas, pharmacist and health author. For over 30 years, I've helped people make informed decisions about their health, especially concerning prevention and long-term wellness. Supporting your liver isn't just a wellness trend, it's a daily essential. That's why I recommend Active Liver by New Nordic. It's made with plant-based ingredients like milk thistle, turmeric, and globe artichoke, herbs clinically studied for their protective and restorative effects on the liver. Active Liver blends traditional herbal wisdom with modern scientific research. Not all supplements are created equal. I trust Active Liver because it's backed by science, meets strict quality standards, and delivers true daily liver support.
Active Liver is available online at Amazon or NewNordicUSA.com, or you can find it in stores at CVS, Meijer Grocery, Wegmans, and now Active Liver is available at your local GNC.
Get ready for the 11th annual Mac and Cheese Fest, happening Saturday, May 9th at the Kern County Fairgrounds from 2 to 6 p.m. This year's event is going to be bigger and better than ever. Enjoy endless servings of mac and cheese, along with refreshing beer, spiked seltzers, cocktails, and live music. Tickets are on sale now. For more information and to grab your tickets, visit BakersfieldMacandCheeseFest.com. Happening Saturday, May 9th at the Kern County Fairgrounds from 2 to 6 p.m.
This event benefits the Bakersfield Ronald McDonald House.
It's that man again, Ralph Bailey. You're listening to the JR Show on Newstalk 96.1 and AM 1230 KERN. Keep it locked. TRBS coming up at 3.
Welcome back to the JR Flores Show. I'm Clayton Campbell, standing in for JR today to wrap things up. When we went to the break, we were talking about the unfairness of gerrymandering and how difficult it can be to have a say in your representation when the state unfairly carves up districts. Now, on the county level, how does that work? We have 5 members of the Board of Supervisors for Kern County. And after each census, they have to draw up districts for the board. And Kern County does not have a charter right now. Now, let's explain what that is. A lot of municipalities in the state of California are too small. They don't have a city charter, or counties that are very sparsely populated don't have a county charter. County charter is kind of like a founding document for the county. It's kind of like a constitution for the county or for a city. There's a city charter. There are some things which a county or a city can choose to do for itself as far as structuring its government. If the county or the city doesn't actually act to codify in a charter procedures or rules for these kind of things, the state has a kind of a backup for the municipality. There's a template. So there are laws that apply unless you have a charter. So what I liken this to, if you don't have a will and you die, what happens to your stuff? The state has rules called intestate succession, and your stuff gets divided up according to the rules of intestate succession, which is basically the state saying, here's what your will is if you don't otherwise specify. So it's the same kind of thing with municipalities. If you don't specify how you choose your members of your board or certain other powers that could be claimed by municipalities in a charter, then the state has a template for you. Now, Kern County does not have a charter. And there's a measure on the ballot in June called Measure A. And in this measure, there's a proposal before the voters, and this was unanimous, by the way. The entire board voted for this, including I think we have one Democrat on the board, Leticia Perez. She voted to put this to the voters. And so this is not a partisan thing. This is a bipartisan thing. It's a measure to create a limited charter that allows the county of Kern, the board of supervisors, to choose the manner in which we select a successor in the event a member of the board of supervisors is unable to complete their term. So somebody dies, they resign, whatever, they can't complete their term. Then there would be a vacancy on the board of supervisors. Well, we only have 4 members, or if we have a vacancy. So right now we have 5 members. So if somebody quit or somebody died, what would happen? Well, right now, somebody in Sacramento, the governor, would choose the successor. So you may recall, I think it was back, it was, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, when we had a vacancy, Karen Go, who's now the mayor of Bakersfield, was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger to complete a term. Am I correct on that? I think that's how she became a member of the board of supervisors. She completed that term, and then later she ran for mayor. But somebody in Sacramento who has no connection to Kern County, who doesn't know the voters, doesn't know the districts, right now has a say on who takes over, who fills out the term of a supervisor who fails to complete their term. So what the board of supervisors is doing is they've put an item on the ballot for this June. It's a limited charter that would only affect how how the county government replaces an absent or a supervisor who fails to complete their term. So how do we replace? Somebody resigns, somebody dies. As it is now, the governor appoints that person. If this measure passes, this is Measure A, and I'm urging everybody who's listening to vote for Measure A because it gives us more local control. Then in the event of a vacancy, the board of supervisors would choose to either put it on the ballot to elect a new member, or they would simply appoint somebody. And that would more likely be done in a situation where there was, not much time left on the term. So, by the way, we have another call. So, but just to wrap up really quick on this Measure A. Measure A is very important. We need to be able to choose our own members of the board of supervisors. So in the event of a vacancy, we want to be able to choose them by election or with our local representatives appointing somebody to fill like a short term. We don't want to have the governor, somebody who's not from here, pick and choose our supervisors. So when you get to your ballot, and by the way, your ballot's going to be like a book this time because there's 70 people running for governor, and then you got all the lieutenant governor candidates and all the attorney general candidates and all these other, the state controller and all these statewide offices. We have a state controller in California, right? I mean, we have all these statewide offices with have all these people running for them. And you're going to have to sift through all that before you get to your congressional candidate and before you get to your legislative candidates, the judicial races. We have 3 great candidates running for judge in 3 different seats. So it's very important for us to be able to, you got to go all the way down, and you're going to find Measure A somewhere toward the end of that ballot. Make sure you vote for it. All right, now we have just a couple minutes left, but we have a caller.
We do.
Presumably to talk about the answer to my last question.
I'm not sure if he has the answer to your last question, but Mark does have something to say.
Okay, Mark, talk to me.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for taking my call. I don't have the answer, but first I wanted to give you a compliment. I've never heard somebody really describe gerrymandering the way you have, and it has really helped me to understand it better. But my question is, I thought when Texas started their redistricting, that I thought I heard that there had already been 5 northeastern states and maybe like Michigan or Illinois that had done this to the point that they had taken their states all the way down to 1 representative already in the past. Is that true or not? Do you know?
Well, I know that Illinois did, and so it may be true, but what's unusual about the Texas redistricting was that Texas did it in the middle of somewhere in between the two censuses. So normally it's done. So like 2020, we had a census. So the 2022 election would have new districts. And so this is 2025. So it's just a couple of years later, they redistricted again after they had already redistricted. So that's what was unusual about that. And that's why it's unusual for California to go do it again and to double down on gerrymandering, and for Virginia to do it the way they did it yesterday. So yeah, it is unusual for us to do it in the middle of the term, which is the only thing unusual about this particular round of gerrymandering. But you're right. Texas was done in response to all these other blue states that have completely gouged all the Republican voters there and disenfranchised them. And so you're right. You may be right that there was 4 or 5 states that already did that, but it's all over. It's rampant. California is the worst offender when it comes to gerrymandering for Democrats.
Yeah, I was surprised when I heard that, and I thought, well, if it's been done 6 times before by the Democrats, and now they're all screaming that Texas is doing it, and I just thought, well, it's been done in the past, you know. And I just was really surprised that there was such an uproar. But my understanding was that in Texas, they're allowed to do that in between that 10-year census.
Well,
where California was not supposed to, but.
Right, that's why we had to have a ballot measure in California, because our Constitution says it's done every 10 years after the census. There's nothing in the federal Constitution that limits a state's ability to change its districts in the middle, in between the census. I mean, there's no reason they can't do that. A state could say, okay, we get 13 congressmen, they're all statewide. Like Nebraska does that, where they have all of them are districts except one goes with the national or with the statewide vote. So, and then I think there's another state in the Northeast, I want to say it's Maine, that does the same thing. So it's weird. Some of the states don't divvy up their congressmen the same way. And then in a place like Wyoming, you're running a congressional race, it's the same as running a Senate race, except there are 2 senators and there's only 1 representative for the whole state. But yeah, there aren't a lot of limits. The limits really have to do with the motivation behind the way you carve up the districts. If it's purely partisan, that's constitutional. If it's for creating certain racial preferences, that's unconstitutional. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for calling, and thank you for the compliment. I'd be happy to answer any questions in the future about that. We have only a few seconds left, so I'm going to give you the answer to the question. Who were the 5 members of the drafting committee for the Declaration of Independence? In addition to John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, we had Benjamin Franklin, we had Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman. All right, we're pretty much out of time here. Thank you. I sure appreciate you listening to me. See you next time.
Kern Radio, AM 1230, KERN, 96.1 FM, K241CI, Bakersfield, an American General Media station.
News this hour from Town Hall. I'm Keith Peters in Washington. Wildfires are intensifying across the southeastern United States. Correspondent Bernie Bennett has more.
They destroyed nearly 50 homes in Georgia. The fires have also forced evacuations and school closures. Some of the biggest blazes are along